My name is Monica, and I am 32 years old working as a hospital administrator while raising my 4-year-old son Jake on my own. For 4.5 years, I supported my parents financially through their hardship paying their bills, mortgage, and medical expenses. When I finally needed their help to watch Jake for just 2 nights, they refused. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from. And click subscribe if you've ever felt taken for granted by family. Trust me, you'll want to see how I finally stood up for myself and my son. I grew up in a quiet middle-class neighborhood in Westlake, Ohio. Our house was nothing fancy, but it was comfortable enough for our family of 4. My parents, Thomas and Diana, provided a stable home, but from my earliest memories, there was always something that bothered me. My younger sister, Amber, 3 years my junior, seemed to receive preferential treatment in almost every situation. When we were kids, Amber would get new clothes while I got hand-me-downs. For birthdays, she would receive elaborate parties with all her friends invited, while mine were simple family gatherings. My parents always had a reason. Money was tight that month. They were too busy with work. It was never that they favored her, at least according to them. As a child, I tried to earn their approval through achievement. I maintained straight A's throughout school, joined extracurricular activities, and always helped around the house without being asked. Amber, meanwhile, struggled academically and rarely contributed to household chores. Yet somehow my parents always had excuses ready for her behavior. Amber is just more sensitive, my mother would say. She needs more encouragement. Or my father would chime in with, "Not everyone is naturally organized like you, Monica. You need to be more understanding of your sister." By the time I reached high school, the pattern was firmly established. I was the responsible one who could handle anything while Amber needed protection and special consideration. Despite feeling the unfairness of it all, I threw myself into building my future. I worked part-time jobs throughout high school, saving every penny I could for college. When acceptance letters arrived, I received scholarships to several state schools, but not enough for a full ride. My parents sat me down for what they called a practical discussion. "We want to help you with college, Monica," my father explained. "But we need to think about Amber too. She might need more financial support when her time comes." In the end, I chose the state university, where I could commute from home to save money. I worked 30 hours a week at a local pharmacy, while taking a full course load in healthcare administration. Meanwhile, I watched my parents start a college fund for Amber, something they had never done for me. Despite the challenges, I excelled in my program. By my junior year, I had secured an internship at Cleveland Memorial Hospital in their administration department. The internship turned into a part-time position, and by graduation, they offered me a full-time role as an administrative assistant with potential for advancement. The early years of my career were marked by hard work and steady progress. I moved into my own apartment, lived frugally, and continued to advance professionally. By 27, I had been promoted to a junior hospital administrator position, overseeing several departments and managing substantial budgets. It was at the hospital that I met James, a charming pharmaceutical sales representative who visited regularly. After months of professional interactions, he asked me out for coffee. Our relationship developed quickly. Within 6 months, we were discussing a future together. When I discovered I was pregnant at 8 months into our relationship, James initially seemed supportive. "We will figure this out together," he promised, squeezing my hand across the restaurant table, where I had nervously shared the news. For the next few months, things seemed to be on track. We looked at apartments together. He came to my first ultrasound. But when I was 6 months pregnant, James stopped answering my calls. I went to his apartment to find it emptied out. His company informed me he had requested a transfer to their West Coast office. Just like that, I was alone and preparing to be a single mother. My parents expressed their disappointment, but offered little practical support. Amber, now working at a boutique after dropping out of community college, made comments about my poor life choices, despite her own questionable decision-making. Jake was born on a rainy April morning. The moment I held him, I knew I would do anything to give him the stable, loving environment he deserved. Maternity leave passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. When I returned to work, I arranged for a daycare near the hospital that allowed me to visit during lunch breaks. The early years of single motherhood tested me in ways I never imagined. Working full-time while caring for an infant meant I was perpetually exhausted. My social life became non-existent. Every penny went toward our basic needs and building a small safety net for emergencies. Through it all, Jake became my purpose. His smile, the reward for all the sacrifices. I built a life for us that was modest but secure. We had a small 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood with good schools. I managed to set aside a small amount each month for Jake's future education. Things were tight, but we were making it work through careful planning and my steadily increasing salary. Little did I know that our carefully balanced life was about to be upended by a crisis that would test my family loyalty in ways I never imagined. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was preparing dinner for Jake, who had just turned 1. My father's voice sounded strained, almost unrecognizable. "Monica, I need to talk to you about something important," he began. "I lost my job today." My father had worked at the same manufacturing company for 25 years, starting on the factory floor and working his way up to operations manager. The company had been struggling with overseas competition for years, but everyone thought my father's position was secure. "They are downsizing the entire management team," he explained, his voice breaking slightly. 20 years of loyalty and they gave me 2 weeks severance. The timing could not have been worse. My mother had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes the previous year, and complications had forced her to reduce her hours at the retail job she had held for over a decade. Their medical insurance had been through my father's employment, and while they were old enough for Medicare, it wouldn't cover all of the specialists and medications my mother needed. Over the next few weeks, more details of their situation emerged. Their retirement savings, which had never been substantial, had been partially depleted by medical expenses not covered by insurance. The mortgage on their house still had 12 years left. They were in real danger of losing everything they had worked for. "We hate to ask this," my mother said during a Sunday visit, her eyes downcast. "But we are falling behind on bills already. Your father is sending out applications everywhere but at his age." She trailed off, the implication clear. I looked at my parents sitting at their kitchen table, the same table where we had shared family meals throughout my childhood. They looked suddenly older, vulnerable, in a way I had never seen before. Despite the complicated feelings I had about our relationship, I couldn't ignore their need. "How much do you need to get by?" I asked, already mentally calculating adjustments to my budget. The numbers they shared were sobering. Their mortgage was $1,650 monthly. Medical expenses, even with Medicare, were running between $800 and $1,200. Then there were utilities, groceries, car payments, and insurance. "It will just be until I find something new," my father promised. "Maybe a few months at most." I nodded, though something in my gut told me it would not be so simple. The job market for older workers in manufacturing was brutal, especially in our region where factories were closing rather than hiring. That evening, as I drove home with Jake sleeping in his car seat, I called my sister. Amber lived just 20 minutes from our parents, compared to my 45-minute drive. "I cannot believe this happened to them," I said after explaining the situation. "Yeah, that really sucks," Amber replied, the sound of a party evident in the background. "Hey, can I call you back? I am at this thing right now." She never called back, and when I reached out again a few days later, she had excuses ready. "Monica, you know I am barely making ends meet at the boutique," she said. "Plus, I am thinking about going back to school. I just cannot help right now." I wanted to point out that her social media was full of shopping trips and weekends away with friends, but I held my tongue. Arguing with Amber never accomplished anything. That weekend, I sat down with my budget and made painful choices. I canceled my small monthly investment contributions. I reduced our grocery budget and cut out the occasional takeout meals that had been my one convenient splurge. I called my cable company and downgraded to the minimum package. These adjustments freed up enough to help my parents with some bills, but not everything they needed. After careful consideration, I applied for a weekend position at an urgent care facility doing administrative work. The hours were Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 6. It would mean barely seeing Jake on weekends, but the additional income would allow me to keep my parents afloat. I arranged for a teenage neighbor to watch Jake during these weekend hours, adding childcare expenses to my already stretched budget. The new schedule was grueling, working 7 days a week while trying to be present for my growing toddler. But I reminded myself it was temporary, just until my father found new employment. During this time, I would call my parents regularly to check on their job search progress. My father always had a reason why the applications hadn't resulted in interviews, or why the interviews hadn't resulted in offers. The job paid too little, the commute was too long, the position wasn't right for his experience. Meanwhile, my mother's health issues continued. New medications were prescribed, each seeming to come with side effects that required additional treatment. Their medical bills remained substantial despite Medicare coverage. What had started as emergency assistance stretched into months and then beyond a year. My father eventually found part-time work at a hardware store, but it paid minimum wage and offered no benefits. The income barely covered their groceries. My mother picked up occasional shifts at her old retail job when her health permitted, but it was inconsistent at best. Throughout this time, Amber remained conspicuously absent. She would visit our parents for holiday meals or special occasions, always arriving empty-handed, while I brought groceries and paid bills. When I would tentatively raise the subject of sharing the financial burden, my parents would quickly defend her. "Amber is still finding herself," my mother would say. "You were always more settled, more organized with money. This kind of responsibility comes easier to you." The fact that I was also raising a child alone while supporting them seemed to factor little into their assessment. What I initially thought would be a few months of financial help for my parents turned into a year, then 2, then more. Their situation never seemed to improve enough for them to regain independence. My father worked various part-time jobs, but nothing with benefits or sufficient hours. My mother's health stabilized but required ongoing expensive medications. Every month I paid their $1,650 mortgage directly to the bank. I had set up automatic transfers to prevent late payments that might put their home at risk. The medical bills varied, but typically ranged between $800 and $1,200 monthly. I organized their medications through a mail-order pharmacy to save costs, but the expenses remained substantial. Beyond these major expenses, there were countless others. When their refrigerator died in the second year, I purchased a new one. When winter heating bills spiked, I covered the difference. When their car needed major repairs, I paid the mechanic. Each emergency seemed to arrive just as I was rebuilding my own small financial cushion. The toll went beyond money. Every 2 weeks, I would drive to their house with groceries, often with an exhausted Jake falling asleep in his car seat. I would stock their pantry, clean areas of the house my mother couldn't manage with her health issues, and listen to their worries and complaints. These visits consumed my precious weekend hours when I wasn't working my second job. Meanwhile, my own needs went unaddressed. A persistent toothache was ignored until it became unbearable, resulting in an expensive root canal that could have been a simple filling had I sought treatment earlier. My car accumulated miles without proper maintenance. Vacations were an unimaginable luxury. Jake was growing up without many of the experiences I had hoped to provide. The educational toys and programs I had researched remained wishful thinking. The swimming lessons I wanted him to have were postponed indefinitely. While I made sure he never felt deprived of necessities, I was acutely aware of the opportunities he was missing. The childcare situation was particularly difficult. The teenage neighbor who had initially watched Jake on weekends became unreliable as she approached graduation. I cycled through a series of sitters, each presenting different challenges. Some were too expensive, others undependable. I lived in constant anxiety about childcare arrangements falling through and jeopardizing my second job, which we couldn't afford to lose. During the third year of supporting my parents, I approached them about occasionally watching Jake. Not regularly, just during childcare emergencies, or to give me a brief respite. "We would love to help," my mother said. "But you know how my blood sugar gets when I am stressed, and watching an active child is a lot for me." My father added, "Plus, we are not as young as we used to be. Kids need someone who can keep up with them." I swallowed my frustration, noting that they seemed to have sufficient energy for their weekly card game with neighborhood friends, or the occasional day trips they took to local attractions. But I didn't press the issue, telling myself they were still adjusting to their new circumstances. As my support of my parents extended into the 4th year, my resentment toward Amber grew. Through social media and family gatherings, I witnessed her carefree lifestyle continuing unabated. She had shifted from the boutique job to working as a personal assistant to a local real estate agent, a position that seemed to involve a lot of lunches and very flexible hours based on her frequent midday posts. When I occasionally raised the issue of sharing responsibility, the responses from my family were always the same. "You are so blessed to have your good job," my mother would say, neatly sidestepping the fact that I was working 2 jobs and barely staying afloat. "Amber just isn't in a position to help right now." My father would add, though Amber's circumstances never seemed to change in a way that would allow her to contribute. During a rare family dinner in the 4th year, I tried again to discuss the situation. Amber had arrived late, showing off a new designer purse and talking about her weekend plans at a lakeside resort. "I was thinking," I said carefully during a lull in the conversation, "that maybe we could work out a way for Amber to take over some of the monthly expenses. Even something small would help." The table fell silent. My mother looked down at her plate. My father cleared his throat. "Monica, we have talked about this," he said firmly. "Your sister has different financial obligations." "Like what?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "What expenses does she have that I don't? I am raising a child alone while working 2 jobs to support this family." Amber rolled her eyes dramatically. "Here we go again, Saint Monica the Martyr. No one forced you to help them. You volunteered." "Because they needed help," I replied, feeling my face flush. "Help that you could have shared in." "Girls, please," my mother interjected. "Let's not ruin dinner. Monica, we appreciate everything you do for us. Amber contributes in other ways." "What ways?" I pressed, but my question was ignored as my father deliberately changed the subject to an upcoming community event. Later that evening, as I was preparing to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "Please don't be hard on your sister," she whispered. "You have always been the strong one. Amber needs more support." I drove home that night with a heaviness in my chest, Jake sleeping peacefully behind me, unaware of the complicated emotions swirling through me. I loved my parents and wanted to ensure they were secure, but the inequality of the situation was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. By the 4.5 year mark of supporting my parents, I was mentally and physically exhausted. The second job, the financial strain, the constant worry about both Jake and my parents had taken its toll. Something would have to change, though I had no idea what that change might look like or how it would come about. The breaking point came unexpectedly, as such moments often do. My regular babysitter, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been watching Jake on weekends for the past 8 months, called me on a Monday with devastating news. "I am so sorry, Monica, but my daughter in Arizona just had her baby early. They are having complications, and I need to fly out there this weekend to help," she explained apologetically. "I know this puts you in a difficult position." Under normal circumstances, I would have scrambled to find alternative childcare for the weekend, but this particular weekend was critical. I had been selected to attend a regional healthcare administration conference in Columbus, a 2-hour drive away. The conference represented a rare professional development opportunity, one that could potentially lead to advancement and better pay. I had already paid the registration fee from my meager savings and arranged the time off months in advance. I spent the evening making calls to everyone I could think of. Agency sitters were prohibitively expensive, especially for overnight care. Friends with children had their own weekend commitments. Coworkers I wasn't close enough with to ask for such a significant favor. After exhausting all other options, I finally called my parents. Though they had resisted watching Jake in the past, surely they would understand the importance of this situation. It was just 2 nights, Friday and Saturday, and Jake was now 4, much more self-sufficient than he had been as a toddler. My mother answered, and I carefully explained the situation, emphasizing the professional importance of the conference and the limited time frame. "Oh, Monica, this weekend," she responded, hesitation evident in her voice. "That is not going to work for us." "Why not?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. It is just 2 nights and Jake is easy to care for now. He can even help you around the house. Well, she replied, your father and I already have plans this weekend. We are driving up to visit Amber. She has been asking us to come see her new apartment, and we finally arranged everything. I felt as if the air had been punched from my lungs. For 4.5 years, I had been supporting them completely, often putting their needs before my own, and certainly before my professional advancement. Yet they couldn't adjust a purely social visit to help me with this one crucial need. Mom, I said slowly, this conference is really important for my career. A better position would mean more financial security for all of us. I hated that I had to frame it in terms of how it would benefit them, but I was desperate. I understand that, honey, but we promised Amber. You know how sensitive she is about feeling neglected. Besides, you always figure things out. You are so resourceful. That last comment ignited something in me. Yes, I always figured things out, because I had never been given any other option. From childhood through my current situation, I had been expected to handle everything on my own, while Amber received endless support and accommodation. So you won't change your plans to help me, after everything I have done for you both? I asked, my voice now shaking with emotion. Monica, please don't make this difficult, my mother replied. It is just one weekend. Maybe one of those agencies can watch Jake. I know they are expensive, but it is just for 2 days. The casual suggestion that I spend money I didn't have when every spare dollar had been going to them for years was the final straw. I have paid your mortgage for 54 months straight, I said, my voice now eerily calm. I have covered medical bills that total over $40,000. I have bought groceries, paid utilities, purchased appliances, and repaired your car. I have worked 2 jobs for 4.5 years while raising my son alone. And you cannot watch him for 2 nights, so I can attend a conference that might help me advance my career. Monica, you are getting emotional, my mother said dismissively. Let's talk about this another time when you are calmer. When would be a good time to discuss it, Mom? When I bring over the next mortgage payment, or when I pay for Dad's prescription refills next week? You know we appreciate everything you do, she replied, her tone now defensive. But we cannot watch Jake this weekend. You will need to figure something else out. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence at my kitchen table. Through the open doorway, I could see Jake in the living room, carefully building a tower with his blocks. My sweet boy who deserves so much more than what our strained circumstances could provide. I thought about all the times I had gone without, so my parents could have what they needed. The vacations never taken, the clothes not bought, the small pleasures denied. All while Amber lived her carefree life, never contributing a dime, and somehow still remaining the favorite child who couldn't be inconvenienced or disappointed. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The sense of familial obligation that had driven me to sacrifice so much began to crack and crumble. In its place rose a fierce determination to stand up for myself and my son, whose needs had taken a back seat for far too long. The morning after my parents' refusal, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I needed time to think and plan. After dropping Jake at preschool, I drove to my apartment complex's office and requested my payment records for the past 4.5 years. Then I visited my bank and asked for statements showing the transfers to my parents' mortgage company and the checks to their medical providers. By noon, I had compiled a comprehensive record of every penny I had spent supporting my parents. The total was staggering, even though I had been aware of each individual payment as it happened. Seeing the cumulative amount laid out chronologically made the inequality of our family dynamic impossible to ignore. I texted my father, "We need to talk, all of us. I am coming over at 7 tonight." His reply was immediate and concerned. "Is everything okay? Your mother mentioned you were upset about this weekend." "No, everything is not okay," I responded. "We will discuss it tonight." Throughout the afternoon, I received several texts from both parents, each expressing concern, but also subtle attempts to postpone our meeting. I remained firm. This conversation could not wait. That evening, I arranged for Jake to stay with a neighbor for 2 hours. When I arrived at my parents' house, I was carrying a large envelope containing the financial records and my hastily created summary spreadsheet. They were waiting in the living room, their faces showing a mixture of concern and defensiveness. My mother attempted to diffuse the tension with small talk about Jake, but I cut directly to the point. I have been supporting this household completely for 4.5 years. I began removing the documents from the envelope. In that time, I have paid $67,200 in mortgage payments. I have covered $54,900 in medical expenses. I have spent approximately $22,000 on groceries, utilities, and household repairs. I laid the papers on the coffee table. My parents stared at them without speaking. That is almost $150,000 that I have provided while working 2 jobs and raising Jake alone. Money that could have gone toward his education fund or a house for us, or even just basic quality of life improvements that we have gone without. My father cleared his throat. Monica, we have always been grateful for your help. You know that. But we never asked you to sacrifice so much. Didn't you? I replied. When you called me 4.5 years ago saying you were about to lose the house, what choice did I have? And every month since then, the need has continued, and I have continued to meet it. We had no idea it had become such a burden to you. My mother said, her voice small. That is the problem, I continued. You have never seen it as a burden because you expect it from me. Monica will handle it. Monica will figure it out. Monica will sacrifice. Meanwhile, Amber contributes nothing and is treated like she is doing her best. Your sister is in a different position. My father began falling back on the familiar excuse. No, I interrupted firmly. Amber has chosen not to contribute, and you have enabled that choice while accepting everything from me. There was a tense silence before my mother spoke again. What do you want from us, Monica? We cannot repay all this money if that is what you are asking. I am not asking for repayment, I clarified. I am asking for recognition of the inequality in how you treat your daughters. I am asking for acknowledgement of the sacrifices I have made. And yes, I am asking why you can drive hours to visit Amber's new apartment, but cannot watch your grandson for 2 nights, so I can attend a conference that might help all of us financially. My father's face flushed with anger. So this is all about the babysitting. You are throwing a tantrum because we said no once after all you have done for us. His characterization of my legitimate grievance as a tantrum ignited something inside me. This is not about one instance of babysitting. This is about years of unequal treatment. This is about the fact that I have supported this entire family while Amber has been completely absent. That is not fair, my mother protested. Amber calls us weekly and visits when she can. Calls and visits do not pay bills, I responded. And speaking of bills, there is something else I need to ask. Last month, the mortgage payment was higher than usual. I assumed it was an escrow adjustment, but when I checked the statement, it showed a late fee. How is that possible when I have never been late with a payment? My parents exchanged a quick glance that confirmed my suspicion that something was being hidden from me. We had an unexpected expense, my father finally admitted. We had to borrow from the mortgage money just for a week, but then couldn't replace it in time. What unexpected expense? I pressed. More uncomfortable silence followed before my mother quietly answered. Amber needed help with a security deposit for her new apartment. It was $2,000 and she was going to lose it if she didn't pay immediately. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You took money I gave you for the mortgage and gave it to Amber, for an apartment she did not need to move to. She wanted to be in a better neighborhood, my mother explained weakly. It was important to her career networking. Has this happened before? I asked, though I already knew the answer from their guilty expressions. How many times have you redirected the money I provided to Amber? Neither would meet my eyes. Finally, my father spoke. Just a few times, when she had emergencies. What kind of emergencies? Car repairs. A deposit for a vacation with friends that was non-refundable. A designer bag that was on sale and meant a lot to her. Each example landed like another blow. While I had been working myself to exhaustion, denying myself and my son basic comforts, my parents had been funneling my support to Amber for luxuries. I want to speak with Amber, I said firmly. Call her right now and put the phone on speaker. My father hesitated, but eventually complied. When Amber answered, she sounded annoyed at being interrupted. Amber Monica is here, and we need to discuss something important, my father explained. What now? She sighed dramatically. Is she complaining about us not babysitting again? Amber, I interjected. Did you know that our parents have been giving you money from what I provide for their mortgage and medical bills? There was a pause before she responded defensively. They help me sometimes when I need it. What is the big deal? The big deal is that I have been working 2 jobs for years to support them while you contribute nothing. And apparently some of that money has been going to fund your lifestyle. Oh, please, she scoffed. Not everyone wants to be a martyr like you, Monica. Some of us actually want to enjoy life. While others pay for it, I challenged. I have denied my son opportunities and experiences because every spare dollar went to supporting our parents who were apparently supporting you. It is not my fault you decided to have a kid on your own, she shot back cruelly. And it is not my fault you volunteered to pay for everything. No one put a gun to your head. Her callous response crystallized everything that was wrong with our family dynamic. My parents said nothing to defend me, to acknowledge the injustice, or to correct Amber's characterization of the situation. I stood up, gathering my documents. I am done, I announced quietly. As of right now, I am no longer financially supporting this household. You have until the 1st of next month to figure out how to pay your own mortgage. Your medical bills are your responsibility going forward. I will not be providing groceries or covering utilities anymore. Monica, you cannot be serious, my mother gasped. We will lose everything. Then I suggest you ask your other daughter for help, I replied, moving toward the door. Or perhaps it is time to consider downsizing to something you can actually afford. After everything we have done for you, my father said, his voice rising in anger. What exactly have you done for me in the past 4.5 years? I asked. Besides taking my money and giving it to Amber while refusing to help with your own grandson. Without waiting for their response, I walked out the door, ignoring their calls to come back and discuss things further. In my car, I felt a strange mixture of terror and liberation. I had just severed financial ties that had defined my life for years. There would be consequences, certainly, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was choosing my son and myself over the endless, thankless support of people who did not truly value my sacrifices. The days following my confrontation with my parents were filled with frantic texts and calls from them, alternating between guilt trips, anger, and pleas for understanding. I responded minimally, maintaining my boundary, while processing my own turbulent emotions. My first priority was securing childcare for the conference. With my newfound resolve not to sacrifice my career advancement any longer, I was determined to attend. On Thursday morning, I confided in Sarah, a coworker I had always been friendly with but never close to. That is absolutely unbelievable, she said after I explained my situation. Listen, my sister is visiting this weekend, and we were just planning to hang out at my place. We would be happy to watch Jake for you. Her easy generosity from someone who owed me nothing contrasted sharply with my parents' refusal. I almost cried in the break room. Are you sure he can be energetic? I warned. My sister has 3 kids. Sarah laughed. We will be fine. Plus, it sounds like this conference is important for you. The conference itself became a turning point in my career. Free from the constant worry about my parents' needs, I fully engaged with the presentations and networking opportunities. I connected with several regional healthcare administrators who were impressed by my experience and insights. One of them, the director of operations at a larger hospital in Cincinnati, mentioned an upcoming position that would represent a significant promotion. Send me your resume, she said, handing me her card. The salary range starts at $20,000 more than what you are probably making now. While the professional opportunities were exciting, it was the personal revelation that truly shifted my perspective. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future defined by my choices and priorities, rather than by family obligation. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. When I returned on Sunday evening to pick up Jake, I found him happily playing board games with Sarah and her sister. They had taken him to the Children's Museum, baked cookies, and generally given him a weekend full of attention and activities. He is such a great kid, Sarah said as we were leaving. "So polite and funny. We had a blast." "Thank you so much," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. This meant everything to me. "Anytime," she responded warmly. "Actually, a few of us from work get together for dinner sometimes. You should join us next week." That simple invitation represented another step toward rebuilding a life beyond work and familial obligation. I accepted gratefully. Meanwhile, the fallout with my family continued. Amber sent a series of increasingly angry texts accusing me of abandoning our parents. "They will lose the house because of you," she wrote. "How can you be so selfish? They raised you." I finally responded with a single message. "They have another daughter. Your turn." My parents took a different approach. After the initial shock wore off, they began attempting reconciliation without addressing the core issues. My mother left tearful voicemails about how much they missed Jake. My father sent emails detailing their financial predicament as if I were unaware of it. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to direct questions and avoiding any discussion of financial support. Instead, I focused on reshaping our lives. With the money that was no longer going to my parents, I made long-delayed improvements to our situation. First, I met with a financial advisor to create a plan for rebuilding my savings and establishing a proper college fund for Jake. The advisor was shocked at how much I had contributed to my parents over the years. "That is more than most people save for retirement in that time frame," she noted. "Let us focus on making up for lost time." I also resigned from my weekend job, reclaiming those precious hours with Jake. Our first free weekend together, we visited a nearby state park, hiking and picnicking beside a lake. Watching him run and play without the weight of exhaustion and financial worry hanging over me was like seeing the world in color after years of gray. Old friendships that had withered from neglect during my years of overwork began to revive as I reached out to people I had lost touch with. My friendship with Sarah deepened as I joined her social circle, gradually allowing myself to enjoy adult conversation and connection that did not revolve around family obligation or work. The first holiday season after the confrontation was challenging. Thanksgiving had always been spent at my parents' house, but this year I accepted an invitation from Sarah to join her family gathering instead. Jake was initially confused about the change in tradition, but quickly adapted to the warm, chaotic energy of Sarah's extended family. "Mom, can we come here for Christmas too?" he asked as we drove home that evening, his face still sticky from multiple servings of pie. "We will see, sweetheart," I replied, realizing we had the freedom to create our own traditions now. As for my parents, their financial reality quickly caught up with them. Without my support, they fell behind on the mortgage immediately. My father increased his hours at the hardware store, and my mother found part-time work she could manage with her health conditions, but their combined income was insufficient for their existing expenses. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that Amber had indeed been pressured to contribute, but was doing so grudgingly and minimally. She had apparently been shocked to discover the actual amounts required to maintain our parents' lifestyle. "It is not fair that I have to give up my spending money," she reportedly complained. "Monica did this to punish me." By the 3-month mark after cutting financial ties, my parents had listed their house for sale, planning to move to a smaller, more affordable condo. The reality of their situation had finally forced practical decisions that should have been made years earlier. 6 months after my confrontation with my parents, Jake and I settled into a new rhythm of life that prioritized our well-being. The absence of the crushing financial burden allowed me space for emotional healing and reflection. With Sarah's encouragement, I started seeing a therapist to work through the complex family dynamics that had shaped my sense of self and responsibility. "What you experienced is a common pattern in family systems," my therapist explained during one session. "You were cast as the responsible one, the family hero who would solve everyone's problems. Your sister was given the role of the one who needed protection and accommodation. These roles get reinforced over time until they seem natural and unchangeable." Through weekly sessions, I began to recognize how deeply ingrained my caretaking tendencies were and how they originated long before my parents' financial crisis. I had been conditioned since childhood to put others' needs before my own, to measure my worth by what I could provide rather than who I was. Setting boundaries is not selfish, my therapist reminded me. It is necessary for healthy relationships. You haven't abandoned your parents. You have simply stopped enabling a dysfunctional pattern. Professionally, things were looking up as well. After several interviews, I received an offer for the operations director position in Cincinnati that I had learned about at the conference. The salary was $22,000 more than my current position, with better benefits and growth potential. The catch was the relocation, a 1 hour and 40-minute drive from our current home. After careful consideration, I accepted the position. The move would put physical distance between us and my parents, providing space for healthier boundaries as we all adjusted to our new reality. One evening, as I was packing boxes in our apartment, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from my mother, handwritten on stationery I recognized from her desk. "Dear Monica," it began. "I have started this letter a dozen times over the past months, never finding the right words. Perhaps there are no right words for the recognition and apology that is long overdue. Your father and I have had many painful conversations since you stopped supporting us financially. At first, we were angry and hurt, focused only on the practical problems your decision created for us. But as we have been forced to truly manage on our own for the first time in years, we have gained perspective on what we asked of you and how unfairly we treated you compared to Amber. The truth is both painful and simple. We took advantage of your responsible nature and generous heart. We accepted your sacrifices as if they were your duty, while protecting Amber from any real responsibility. In doing so, we failed both our daughters in different ways. We have sold the house and moved into a small 2-bedroom condo that we can afford on our combined part-time incomes. It has been a difficult adjustment, but a necessary one. Amber has been contributing a small amount monthly, though I must admit it came only after significant pressure and conflict. I cannot undo the years of inequality or return the money you sacrificed for us. I cannot even promise that I will always be perfect in treating you and Amber equally going forward, as these patterns are deeply ingrained. But I can promise that I am trying to see clearly now, to acknowledge the harm done, and to build whatever new relationship you might be willing to consider. You were right to protect yourself and Jake. A mother's first responsibility is to her child, a lesson I failed to honor when I put Amber's wants above Jake's needs. I hope someday you can forgive us, but I will understand if that time has not yet come. With love and regret, Mom." I sat with the letter for a long time, emotions washing through me in waves. There was vindication in the acknowledgement, pain in remembering the years of sacrifice, and a cautious hope that perhaps genuine change was possible, even if reconciliation would be slow and careful. A week later, Jake and I visited my parents in their new condo before our move to Cincinnati. The space was modest, but comfortable, signs of their downsized life evident in the reduced furniture and simplified decor. "Jake has grown so much," my mother said softly as she watched him explore the small patio garden she had created. I agreed. "He is excited about the move. His new school has a science program he cannot stop talking about." There was an awkward silence before my father spoke. "Monica, we want you to know that we understand why you did what you did. It was long overdue, honestly." "It was," I confirmed, neither accusatory nor apologetic. "We would like to be part of Jake's life," my mother added tentatively, "on whatever terms you set." I considered their request carefully. Despite everything, they were still Jake's only grandparents, and complete estrangement seemed unnecessarily harsh if they were genuinely recognizing their past behavior. "We can start with video calls once a week," I offered, "and perhaps visits every other month if those go well. But I need to be clear about something: my boundaries are not negotiable anymore. I will not be providing financial support beyond occasional gifts for special occasions, the way a normal adult child might." They both nodded, accepting the terms without protest. It was a small step, but a significant one in establishing a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. As for Amber, we remained distant. She had sent a half-hearted message suggesting we move past all the drama, but showed no real acknowledgement of her role in the family dynamics. I wished her well, but maintained firm boundaries, unwilling to re-engage with someone who still viewed my legitimate grievances as overreactions. Our move to Cincinnati represented more than just a career advancement. It was a fresh start, an opportunity to build a life defined by choices rather than obligations. I purchased a small three-bedroom house in a neighborhood with excellent schools establishing roots for Jake that felt secure and hopeful. The journey of healing continued with occasional setbacks and difficult moments. There were times when old patterns threatened to reemerge, when I felt the pull to sacrifice my needs for others' wants. But each time I remembered the lesson learned through those difficult years. True love, whether in family relationships or friendships, is reciprocal and respectful of boundaries. Jake thrived in our new environment, growing into a confident, empathetic child with a natural sense of balance between generosity and self-care, a balance I hoped would serve him better than my own previous extremes. As for me, I found a peace I had not known before. The weight of unsustainable responsibility had been replaced by the lighter, more natural connections of chosen relationships and appropriate boundaries. I had discovered that standing up for myself and my son did not make me selfish or uncaring, but rather allowed me to give from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. In the end, the most profound lesson was one I hope to pass on to Jake. Real love does not demand endless sacrifice without reciprocity. True family supports each other in times of need, but does not exploit or take for granted. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and others is to say enough when boundaries have been crossed too many times. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to prioritize their own well-being sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own relationships.